Did you know that saving your first $100,000 is mathematically and psychologically the hardest thing you will ever do with your money? Most people look at wealth as a smooth and steady climb up a very tall mountain. They assume that if it takes you a certain amount of effort to reach the first base camp, it will take the exact same amount of effort to reach the second. But the reality of money is entirely different. The beginning of the journey is not a walk up a gentle slope. It is a grueling vertical climb up a sheer cliff face with no safety harness. When you start with absolutely nothing, every single dollar you save feels heavy. You are fighting against the gravitational pull of your own living expenses, societal expectations, and the constant temptation to spend whatever you earn just to feel a little bit of comfort. It feels like you are pushing a massive boulder up a hill, and the moment you take your hands off it, it threatens to roll right back down and crush you. We live in a world that constantly sells us the illusion of overnight success. We see teenagers making millions on the internet, people striking it rich on a lucky stock pick, or neighbors driving brand new luxury cars. This creates a terrible distortion in our minds. It makes us feel like we're falling behind, like we are doing something wrong because our bank account is barely inching upward. Here's the harsh truth. Those stories are anomalies, and focusing on them will only blind you to the actual mechanics of building lifelong security. There is a famous piece of advice from the legendary investor Charlie Munger. He once said that accumulating the first $100,000 from a standing start is a nightmare, but you have to do it. He didn't say it was slightly difficult. He didn't say it requires some patience. He used blunt language because he understood the absolute brutality of this specific financial milestone. The reason this first major hurdle breaks so many people is that it requires a massive sacrifice of your current lifestyle for a future reward that you cannot even see yet. You are putting your head down, packing your lunch, driving an old car, and saying no to invitations, all while your portfolio balance looks tiny. You look at your account after a year of intense sacrifice, and it feels like a drop in the ocean. The psychological weight of this phase is crushing because human beings are wired to seek immediate gratification. But something profound happens when you refuse to quit. You aren't just hoarding cash, you are actively rewriting your own psychology. You are building a new identity. The discipline required to scrape together those first few tens of thousands of dollars strips away your need for external validation. You stop caring about looking rich to strangers, and you start caring about becoming untouchable and truly independent. And as your psychological resilience grows, something mathematical begins to stir in the background. In the early days, the interest you earn is so small you can barely buy a cup of coffee with it. It feels insulting. But as you get closer to that six-figure mark, the engine of your portfolio starts to quietly turn over. The money itself begins to generate its own gravity. This entire video is dedicated to explaining why crossing this specific threshold changes everything about your life. Once you break through the atmospheric pressure of $0 to $100,000, the rules of the game permanently shift. You transition from an era where your back does all the heavy lifting to an era where your money starts carrying the load. The climb never truly ends, but the gravity holding you down gets significantly weaker. Let us explore exactly how this transformation happens and why the initial struggle is the most important battle you will ever fight. To truly understand the gravity of the first $100,000, we need to look at two different paths. Let's meet Marcus and David. They are both 26 years old, they work in the same office building, and they both earn exactly $60,000 a year. On paper, their lives are identical, but in reality, they are playing two completely different games. Marcus is what we will call the sprinter. He believes that earning a good salary is the finish line. The moment he landed this job, he immediately upgraded his lifestyle to match his new income. He moved into a luxury apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows. He wanted his living space to reflect his success, even if it meant half of his monthly paycheck vanished the moment it was deposited. To complete the picture, Marcus walked into a dealership and financed a $40,000 car. He loves the feeling of pulling up to traffic lights and having people notice him. He buys expensive coffees, wears designer clothes, and never misses a Friday night out with his coworkers. Marcus looks incredibly wealthy to anyone passing by on the street. But behind closed doors, the reality is entirely different. Marcus is suffocating under the weight of his own lifestyle. He has no emergency fund, and his credit card balance creeps up every single month. He is accumulating what we call social debt. He is borrowing against his own future just to impress people in the present. If he loses his job, his entire world collapses in less than 30 days. His net worth is effectively zero. Now let's look at David, whom we will call the grinder. David earns the exact same $60,000, but he views money through a completely different lens. He still lives in a modest apartment a few miles outside the city center, and he shares the rent with a roommate. His living space is clean and comfortable, but it doesn't win any awards for interior design. David drives a 12-year-old sedan with a noticeable dent in the rear bumper. The car is fully paid off. He brings his lunch to work most days and brews his coffee at home. When his coworkers invite him out for expensive dinners, he politely declines or joins them later just for a drink. To the outside observer, David looks like he's struggling. He looks like someone who simply can't afford the good things in life. But here's the harsh truth. Wealth is what you don't see. What people don't see is that David is ruthlessly funneling $1,500 every single month into broad market index funds. He's acting as a silent architect, laying the foundation for a fortress that no one else can view. He doesn't care about the approval of strangers in traffic because his eyes are locked on a specific horizon. David understands that his current lifestyle is a temporary sacrifice. He's playing a long-term game of endurance, while Marcus is sprinting on a treadmill that keeps moving faster. Every time Marcus makes a car payment, that money is gone forever, swallowed by depreciation and interest. Every time David buys a share of an index fund, he's buying a tiny slice of his future freedom. The divergence between these two young men is invisible at first. In year one, Marcus has a shiny car and David has a boring spreadsheet with $18,000 on it. Marcus feels like the winner. But this is exactly where the trap is set. The societal script tells us that money is meant to be spent, that income equals wealth. That's a dangerous lie that keeps the middle class trapped in a cycle of endless labor. David is slowly inching toward that monumental $100,000 milestone. He's doing the quiet, unglamorous work that goes entirely unrecognized by society. He feels the psychological weight of his choices, wondering sometimes if he's missing out. But he keeps pushing, knowing that while Marcus is buying the appearance of wealth, David is buying the actual mechanics of freedom. Society loves the idea of the brilliant investment. We are conditioned to believe that wealth is generated by finding the perfect stock, timing the market exactly right, or stumbling onto a revolutionary new asset before anyone else does. This creates a dangerous illusion that intelligence and luck are the primary drivers of financial independence in the beginning. People obsess over the difference between a 7% return and an 8% return, spending hours agonizing over which fund to pick. They assume the investment vehicle is what matters most, but when you are starting from zero, the vehicle barely matters at all. The engine that drives your initial wealth accumulation is not your investment return, but your savings rate. This is a very hard pill to swallow for anyone embarking on this journey. You can be the greatest investor on the planet, generating massive percentage gains, but if your principal balance is tiny, those gains mean absolutely nothing in the real world. Let us look at the actual numbers, because the math doesn't lie. Imagine you have managed to scrape together your first $10,000. You do your research, pick a fantastic set of index funds, and the market has an incredible year, returning a massive 10%. Your reward for that phenomenal market performance is exactly $1,000. Over 12 full months of waiting and holding steady, you generated enough money to maybe cover a few weeks of groceries. Now compare that to your personal savings rate. If you earn $60,000 a year and cut your expenses to save 20% of your income, you are putting away $12,000 a year. That is $1,000 every single month. Your own discipline generated in 30 days what a spectacular market return took a full year to produce on your initial balance. In the pursuit of the first $100,000, your savings rate is the undisputed king. It accounts for the vast majority of your progress. The money you make from your money is negligible during this phase. This is why the first leg of the journey is so exhausting. It is entirely dependent on your human capital, your labor, and your ability to tolerate discomfort. You are the engine, running entirely on your own physical energy. This is precisely where most people give up entirely. They look at their portfolio after a year of extreme frugality, see that their investments only made a few $100s in interest, and feel deeply discouraged. They feel like the system is broken. They conclude that getting wealthy is impossible for normal people, so they abandon the mission and go back to spending everything they earn. Surviving this phase requires a profound shift in mindset. You have to accept the grind. You cannot invest your way out of a bad savings rate in the beginning. You must view your early portfolio not as a magical money printing machine, but as an empty vault. Your only job is to shovel as much cash into that vault as humanly possible. You have to take pride in the manual labor of saving. The beauty of this brutal phase is the discipline it forces you to build. Because you cannot rely on market returns, you are forced to optimize your entire life. You learn how to ignore the constant barrage of advertising telling you to buy more things. You develop a psychological armor that will protect your wealth forever. As you push past $50,000, then $70,000, the dynamic slowly begins to shift. Your human capital is still doing the heavy lifting, but the background noise of your investment returns starts to get a little bit louder. You are building the critical mass necessary to trigger the next phase. You are doing the hard manual labor now, so the mathematics of the universe can take over later. Drive a car at 60 miles an hour, you cover 60 miles every hour. We assume wealth works the exact same way. If it takes you 7 years of hard labor to save your first $100,000, the human brain naturally assumes the next $100,000 will require another 7 years of identical misery. This linear expectation is exactly why so many people feel hopeless. They do the math in their heads. They think, if I'm 30 years old now and it took me this long to hit 6 figures, I'll be dead before I ever reach $1 million. It feels like a life sentence of clipping coupons and driving beat-up cars. But the math doesn't lie. And money doesn't grow in a straight line. Once you reach that first major milestone, a completely different mathematical force awakens. We call it compound interest. It's the phenomenon where your money starts making its own money, and then those new dollars immediately get put to work to make even more. Let's break down the actual timeline so you can visualize the snowball effect. Imagine you're diligently investing $10,000 every single year, and the broader market gives you an average annual return of 7%. Starting from zero, reaching your first $100,000 will take you roughly 7.8 years of relentless discipline. That's nearly 8 years of putting your head down, working hard, and ignoring the urge to spend. It's a massive chunk of your life where you're doing almost all the heavy lifting. Now look at the journey to the second $100,000. You keep saving that same $10,000 a year, but now you have an invisible partner working alongside you. Reaching $200,000 doesn't take another 7.8 years. It only takes about 5.1 years. You just shaved over 2.5 years off your timeline without doing any extra work. The snowball is rolling down the hill, gathering speed and mass. Going from $200,000 to $300,000 takes only 3.7 years. Reaching $400,000 takes just 2.8 years. By the time you're aiming for your first million, every subsequent $100,000 takes less than a year to accumulate. This is the tipping point where the entire financial game changes. During the first $100,000, you're working for your money. But after you cross that threshold, your money starts working for you. Your portfolio becomes a second, silent income stream that never sleeps, never takes a vacation, and never complains. It's hard to overstate how much peace of mind this brings. When your portfolio starts generating $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 a year in compound growth, you realize we're no longer carrying the entire burden of our future on our shoulders. The pressure begins to lift. You finally start to see the reward for all those years of driving the dented sedan and packing your lunch. The brutal uphill slog transforms into a downhill sprint. You've built a machine that manufactures wealth, and the only fuel it needs now is time. The traditional retirement narrative tells us a very specific and exhausting story. It says that you must save 20% of your income every single month for 40 consecutive years without fail. It paints a picture of endless, unbreakable labor until you are 65 years old. According to this societal script, if you miss a few months of saving or decide to take a break from your career, you are doomed to struggle in your final years. This terrifying narrative is exactly why so many people feel trapped in careers they absolutely despise. They believe they are chained to their current high salary because stepping down or slowing their pace would mean giving up their future security. But reaching that first $100,000 milestone early enough shatters this illusion completely and rewrites the rules of your financial life. To understand how this works, we need to look at a concept called Coast-Fi, which stands for Coast Financial Independence. This is not about retiring tomorrow. Instead, it is the exact moment where your currently invested assets, left completely alone to grow, will mathematically hit your ultimate retirement number by the time you reach traditional retirement age. The math doesn't lie. Let us assume you have sacrificed, grinded, and successfully saved your first $100,000, fully invested in broad market index funds by the time you are 30 years old. Because of the psychological toll of that sprint, you decide you are entirely done saving for retirement. You never want to put another penny into your investment accounts. If that $100,000 sits untouched and grows at a historical average of 7% after inflation, the magic of compound interest takes the wheel. By the time you are 40 years old, that balance will have doubled to $200,000. By age 50, it will double again to $400,000. By age 60, it sits at $800,000. And by the time you reach 65, your portfolio will have crossed the $1 million mark. You will have reached millionaire status, fully funding a comfortable retirement without contributing a single additional dollar for 35 solid years. This specific mathematical achievement is known as the crossover point. It is the moment where your baseline survival in old age is completely secured by the engine you built in your younger years. You did the brutal manual labor early, and in return, you have effectively purchased the safety of your own future. Think about the profound psychological shift this creates in your daily life. If your retirement is already fully funded by your past efforts, your present income only needs to cover your current living expenses. You no longer have the burden of stripping away 20% of your paycheck to feed a retirement account. Every dollar you earn today can be used for today. This realization grants you an unbelievable amount of leverage over your own existence. You can finally step off the gas pedal. If your high-stress corporate job is ruining your mental health, you can simply quit. You can take a much lower-paying job that you actually enjoy because your income requirements have drastically dropped. This freedom also opens the door to strategies like geographic arbitrage. Because you only need to cover your baseline living expenses, you can move to a cheaper city or a different country where your money goes twice as far. You can work a simple job, spend more time outside, and live a life of total autonomy. Reaching this first massive milestone means you have fundamentally shifted your relationship with the labor market. You are no longer an employee working out of sheer terror of the future. You have bought yourself the ultimate luxury, which is the ability to navigate the rest of your life completely on your own terms. Reaching your first $100,000 is an exhilarating feeling. You look at that six-figure number on your screen and you feel like you have finally made it to the top of the mountain. After years of bringing your lunch to work in plastic containers and driving a car that makes strange noises, the immediate, overwhelming temptation is to finally reward yourself. You want to celebrate your grueling discipline by loosening your grip on your wallet. This is exactly where the societal script kicks in the hardest. Society conditions us from a very young age to believe that when we achieve a major financial milestone, we are supposed to visibly upgrade our lives. We are supposed to trade in the reliable commuter car for a European luxury vehicle. We are supposed to leave the modest apartment and sign a mortgage for a massive house with a manicured lawn. We feel immense pressure to show the world that we are doing well. But this specific moment is where the vast majority of people completely self-sabotage their financial future. They reach the finish line of their first major goal, and instead of letting their newly built wealth machine run, they dismantle the engine to buy a trophy. They mistake the starting line for the finish line. Let us look at the mathematical reality of this mistake. The math doesn't lie. If you decide to take $30,000 out of your hard-earned $100,000 portfolio to use as a down payment on a luxury car, you are not just spending $30,000. You are murdering the compound interest that money was destined to generate over the rest of your life. That $30,000, left completely alone to grow at a standard 7% return, would have become over $220,000 in 30 years. When you buy that luxury vehicle to celebrate your milestone, you are literally trading $250,000 in future freedom for a piece of metal that will lose half of its value by the time you finish making the payments. This phenomenon is known as lifestyle creep, and it is the silent, invisible killer of the middle class. It is the insidious process where your living expenses rise at the exact same rate as your income or your net worth. You look richer, and you feel richer. But mathematically, you are just running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster and faster. People fall into this destructive trap because they are unknowingly playing the status game. The status game is a deeply ingrained psychological contest where we use our money to signal our value to other people in our tribe. We desperately want our coworkers, our high school friends, and strangers on the internet to know that we are successful and important. But playing the status game is an unwinnable, exhausting war. There will always be someone in your neighborhood with a newer car, a bigger kitchen island, or a more expensive watch. When you tie your personal self-worth to the things you can buy, you condemn yourself to a lifetime of mandatory labor just to keep up a fragile charade. You become a prisoner to your own possessions. Here's the harsh truth. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the absolute fastest way to have less money. The people who look the richest in your city are often the ones closest to the edge of bankruptcy, drowning in high-interest payments just to maintain an illusion. Wealth is what you don't see. True wealth is the unspent income sitting quietly in an index fund. True wealth is the options you have preserved and the time you have bought back from the corporate world. The mandatory mindset shift at this stage is learning how to decouple your ego from your spending habits entirely. You have to realize that the ultimate sign of success is not a designer wardrobe or a luxury car parked in the driveway. The true flex is looking at those expensive items, knowing with absolute certainty that you could buy them in cash today and simply walking away because your independence is infinitely more valuable. When we talk about the cost of the status game, we usually focus on the dollars and cents. But the true price of trying to look wealthy is paid in a much darker, heavier currency. It is paid in what we call social debt. Social debt is the psychological burden you carry when your entire lifestyle is built on impressing other people. It is the suffocating realization that you cannot afford to stop moving, even for a second, because the illusion would instantly shatter. Imagine the sheer exhaustion of waking up every morning to a blaring alarm clock, feeling a knot of dread in your stomach about a high-stress career that you secretly despise. You sit on the edge of the bed and realize that you cannot walk away. You cannot take a lower-paying job or take 6 months off to recover your mental health because you are trapped by your own possessions. The lease on the European car, the mortgage on the massive house, and the credit card bills from luxury vacations all demand continuous, mandatory labor. This nightmare is exactly what the pursuit of the first $100,000 is designed to prevent. The brutal frugality and the intense savings rate of your early 20s or 30s are not a punishment. They are a rescue mission. You are aggressively buying back the only truly non-renewable resource in the universe, which is your time. You can always find a way to make another dollar, but no amount of money or influence can buy you another hour on this earth. There is a common misconception that delaying financial gratification means putting your entire life on hold. People think that if you are saving aggressively, you must be miserable, sitting in a dark room and refusing to have any fun until you are 65. But that is completely missing the point. The goal is not to stop spending money entirely. The goal is to fundamentally redirect your spending away from depreciating objects and toward compounding experiences. This brings us to the beautiful concept of memory dividends. In the financial world, a dividend is a cash payment you receive simply for owning an asset. A memory dividend is the exact same concept, but applied to human psychology. When you spend your limited time and money on a profound, meaningful experience with the people you love, you do not just experience that joy once. You get to relive it, talk about it, and smile about it for the rest of your life. Unlike a brand new luxury vehicle that loses its psychological thrill after 6 months of commuting, a memory dividend actually grows more valuable as you get older. A simple, inexpensive road trip in a beat-up car with your closest friends might cost a few $100s, but it pays out massive psychological dividends for decades. You will laugh about the time the car broke down or the strange motel you stayed in long after the car itself has been sent to a junkyard. When we reach the final chapters of our lives, the things we value most will undergo a radical shift. Here's the harsh truth. Nobody on their deathbed ever looks back and wishes they had upgraded their kitchen countertops or bought a more expensive watch. They think about the time they spent with their children, the places they explored, and the quiet moments of peace they enjoyed. They measure their life in memories, not in material possessions. We often fear missing out on current trends, but the only regret we should actually fear is the regret of a life unlived. The regret of spending 40 years trapped in a cubicle simply because we lacked the discipline to say no to the status game. That is the true tragedy of the middle class. They trade their finite, precious time on Earth for a collection of objects that they cannot take with them. Building that first $100,000 forces you to confront this reality head-on. By stripping away all the artificial desires implanted by clever marketing, you are forced to figure out what actually brings you genuine happiness. You learn how to manufacture your own joy without swiping a credit card. Once you discover that internal source of happiness, you become incredibly dangerous to the traditional system. You stop being a consumer and you start being an owner. You realize that protecting your time and minimizing future regret is the ultimate financial strategy, and you finally step off the treadmill for good. The journey to your first $100,000 is ultimately not about the mathematics of compounding or the specific index funds you choose to buy. It is about a fundamental transformation of your own identity. You enter this tunnel as a consumer, highly susceptible to the clever marketing and the relentless societal pressures that keep the middle class broke. But if you can survive the immense pressure of that initial climb, you exit the tunnel as an entirely different person. You emerge as an owner, someone who finally understands the true mechanics of the modern world. When we are young, we are conditioned to believe that the primary purpose of money is to purchase objects. We think that an increasing salary is just a mechanism to acquire larger, shinier, and more expensive things to display to our peers. But the grueling process of saving that initial six-figure sum forces a profound realization. You learn that money's highest, most sacred purpose is not to buy status. Its highest purpose is the power to say no and to permanently control your own time. The power to say no is the single greatest luxury that exists in society. When you have $0 in the bank, your default answer to the world must always be yes. You have to say yes to the toxic boss, yes to the exhausting commute, and yes to the soul-crushing overtime. Because your immediate survival depends on your next paycheck. You are entirely at the mercy of your employer, the economy, and your circumstances. But the moment your portfolio crosses that magical threshold, the power dynamic fundamentally shifts. You no longer need their permission to survive. If your work environment becomes intolerable, you can simply walk away. You have built a psychological and financial fortress that protects you from the anxieties that plague the vast majority of the population. Walking through life with that silent, invisible shield of security brings a level of deep, profound peace that no luxury vehicle could ever replicate. This is why we must stop idolizing the wrong things. Society worships the people who are loud with their money, the ones who wear their entire net worth on their wrists or park it in their oversized driveways. But those people are often the most trapped, burdened by immense social debt. True wealth is what you don't see. It is the quiet confidence of the person who drives an older car but knows they never have to work another day in their life if they choose not to. The real flex is not a shiny object to impress people you barely know. The real flex is time freedom. It is waking up on a random Tuesday morning and having complete and total autonomy over what happens next. It is the ability to sit quietly with a cup of coffee, read a book, go for a walk, Or spend the entire afternoon with your family without looking at your watch or worrying about an urgent deadline. It is existing entirely on your own terms. The climb to get to this point will test every ounce of your resolve. You will have to endure the mocking of people who do not understand your vision. You will have to fight your own psychological urges to quit, to upgrade your lifestyle, and to take the easy path. But when the math finally takes over and your money begins to outwork you, you will look back on those early years of sacrifice with immense pride. You will realize that you didn't just save money, you saved your own life. You only get one chance to experience this existence, and time is the only currency you can never earn back. Do not trade your finite days on Earth for the fleeting approval of strangers. Play the long game. Build the foundation. Endure the slog of the first 100,000. Let compound interest do the heavy lifting for the rest of your journey, and step into the sunlight of total independence. If this video opened your eyes or gave you a new perspective, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what your ideal future actually looks like, and make sure to subscribe for more. Remember, wealth isn't just a number in a bank account, it's the freedom to design your own life.